Okay, that sheet you can put away. We're gonna take a little break from that today. Not to say this is easy, okay? Because first part is, okay? Absolute value, if you're on virtual, you need to write something down. Absolute value, that's distance from 0 on a number line, okay? Absolute value means distance from 0. Now, you're also going to want to make a number line. It doesn't have to be ginormous. Just go from 0 to 8, 0 to -8, because I need to make the illustration. Okay, now you're going to want to make your 8 boxes of death here, okay? And the directions here are just to evaluate. This first part's a walk in the park. You have the absolute value of -5 equals. All you do is go to -5 and count to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -5 is measured by distance, okay? Distance is always expressed as a positive, no matter what direction you go. It's like from going to here to Storm Lake 7 miles, but if you go the other direction to Aurelia 7 miles. You never express distance as a negative, okay? Because that means distance, the distance to 0, okay? Now, absolute value of 4. Again, what does absolute value mean? It means distance to 0. Okay, so 4 to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, sometimes there's separate absolute values. You have the absolute value of -4 plus the absolute value of 8. Both those are distance from 0, okay? -4 is a distance of 4 from 0. 8 is a distance of 8 from 0. Even though it's going the other direction, it's still a distance of 8. So it ends up being 4 plus 8. So that's 12. Okay, next one. The absolute value of -2 minus 7 minus the absolute value of -13 plus 3. So we got to evaluate these two absolute value boxes, okay? So -2, first off, you got to actually evaluate inside before you decide what the distance is. So -2 minus 7 is -9. Now the absolute value of -9 from -9 to 0 would be 9, okay? So you can drop 9 down, then the outside minus. -13 plus 3 is -10. From -10 to 0, that's a distance of 10. So it's 9 minus 10. Now, 9 minus 10 is -1. And that's the answer, okay? You can get a negative answer at the end. You just, out of these boxes, have to come positives. But now that the boxes are gone, I just evaluate like normal. It's in little boxes that won't be negative, okay? The overall answer can be negative, just not the brackets or the box, okay? So you evaluate inside, then evaluate your distance to 0, evaluate the inside, evaluate your distance to 0, and then the absolute values, they're gone. It's just 9 minus 10, which is -1. Okay? Next one. The absolute value of -4 plus 10 plus the absolute value of -12. So you evaluate your absolute value brackets. -4 plus 10 is 6. Now I can evaluate the distance. 6 to 0 is a distance of 6. So we have 6 plus, and I only have one value in there, so I can evaluate the distance. -12 to 0 is 12, so it's 6 plus 12. And it's just a regular problem now. Equals 18. Okay, that's part 1. Now part 2 is a long part, okay? We'll be using 2 boxes for a problem. We are solving absolute value equations. Solve the absolute value equation. There's a technique to this, okay, that makes it a little bit easier. Absolute value of x equals 10. Now, there's always 2 places that you can have an absolute value at 10, because remember what, first off, make a box. First off, you're going to make a table over here. Now, inside the absolute value, you have x, okay? You're going to put x on both sides. x and x, whatever's inside the absolute value. Put that on both sides of your table. Then after you've done that, you're going to put a box around your absolute value and write d for distance. So the distance is equal to 10, okay? Well, there's two places you can have a distance of 10. You can be at positive 10, but you can also be at negative 10. And those equations are pretty much solved. Those are the two answers, okay? That one's easy, pretty much a walk in the park. Now it gets a little bit more challenging. Absolute value of x plus 12 equals 2. And again, you can check your answer. If you put 10 in that box, the distance is 10. If you put negative 10 in that box for x, the distance is still 10. Okay, so that's why it's both answers. Now, whatever's inside the absolute value, you put that over here. X plus 12, x plus 12. Then you put equals and equals. So now box it up, and d equals 2. But that could be at 2 or negative 2. But now you got operations with x. So just a plus 12, so you circle x and you minus 12. Don't have multiplying or dividing. Negative 10, circle your x, minus 12, minus 12. Negative 2 minus 12 is negative 14. Okay? So those are two answers, because you see, if I don't write this down, I'm just proving why those are your two answers. So if I put negative 10 in for x plus 12, and then I put negative 14 in for x plus 12, negative 10 plus 12 is 2, but the distance is 2. Negative 14 plus 12 may be negative 2, but the distance of negative 2 to 0 is 2. Okay, so those both come out. I'm not going to do that on every problem, otherwise this video takes too long. Absolute value of f minus 6 equals 4. So within the absolute value, the inside is f minus 6. You write that on both sides of your table, because there's two possible absolute values. Now put a box around it and put d for distance. Okay, d equals 4. So you can be to have a distance equal to 4, you can be at 4 or negative 4. Okay, so f minus 6 would be a plus negative 6, so you need to add 6 to get it to 0, and that would be 10. Likewise here, the only operation's a minus 6, so you got to get the negative 6 to 0, so plus 6, negative 4 plus 6 is 2. If you do what we did here, you're going to get an absolute value of 4. 10 minus 6 is 4, but the absolute value is 4. If I put a 2 in minus 6, that's negative 4, but that absolute value is still a distance of 4. Okay. All right, next one, absolute value of 3x equals 12. What do you have within the absolute value? You have the expression 3x. Now, box it up, and you have d. So distance is 12, so that could be a possibility of 12 or negative 12. Okay, that needs a times operation, so that means we're going to divide. We don't have to worry about the sign switch in the k or s, because it's just an equals. Okay, so x equals 4. Now divide by 3, and x would equal negative 4. 3 times 4 is 12, which is a distance of 12 from 0. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, which is a distance of 12 from 0. Okay, next one. Now the game's going to change, okay? Don't let it freak you out. What's the inside of the absolute value? Negative 3x. You just copy that on each side of your table. Now put a box around that and you have d. Well, it's d minus 2 equals 4. So I don't just put 4 over here. So I write the equation d minus 2 equals 4. So like I would make a wall. and the operation's minus 2, it should be plus negative 2, and you have to add 2 to each side. So your distance is 6, so you can be 6 or negative 6. Then I go over here and solve. So between 3 and x, that'd be times. Circle it. And then you divide by negative 3. 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. Okay, you divide. Positive 2. That doesn't always happen, it just happened on this one. Next one, 5. We got this random 5 out front of the absolute value, plus 4 equals 35. Inside of the absolute value, we have the expression 2x plus 4. That's what's inside of it. You just translate. Don't distribute the 5. Don't do that, okay? Box it up, put your D. Now what this means now is 5 times D. Okay, so 5 times D equals 35. You just remove the box and replace it with a D variable for distance. So now 5 times what's 35? You have a times operation, so to solve it you need to divide. So D equals 7. Now I go 7 and negative 7. You got times 2 and plus 4. You need to get 4 to 0 by minusing. Then divide by your 2. So 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. You can get a decimal, it's fine. Okay, you need to subtract your 4, just like you did over here, but now it's negative 7 minus 4. That's negative 11. Then you divide by 2. And negative 11 divided by 2 is going to be negative 5.5. Okay, next problem. 6. Absolute value 5x minus 2 minus 3 equals 21. If you want to do plus negative with your minus operations, that's fine. Now, don't let it freak you out. Look at the inside. You know you're taking that expression to the table. Now, to find out what it's equal, we need to use our D. So the D will have a 6 in front, so 6 times D, and it has a negative 3 added behind it. Now we can solve it, okay? So the wall, we got times, get your negative 3 to 0 by adding. That gives me 24. Then divide by 6, and D equals 4. See, on those first few lights burned out in my kitchen, okay. Alright, so D equals 4, so it could be at 4 or negative 4. Okay, so we got times 5 and negative 2, so I add 2, 4 plus 2 is 6. Then I divide by 5. 6 divided by 5 is going to be 1.2. Now over here, plus 2, plus 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Then I need to divide by my 5. Negative 2 divided by 5 is going to be negative 0.4. You can get negative answers for x, that's fine. For the variable inside, that can happen. This camera works pretty well in the dark, man. Okay. Okay, my next problem. We have negative 4, absolute value x plus 1 equals 16. So within the absolute value, we have x plus 1. Now, let's put D. So D is going to be multiplied by a negative 4. and nothing is added to it, it just goes equal to 16. So the only operation we have is times. We don't have to add or subtract, but we'd solve a multiplying by dividing by negative 4. Okay, so that makes negative 4. Okay, this is a no solution, and I'm going to tell you why. The distance cannot equal a negative. If d is equal to a negative number, it's a no solution. You don't even go to the table. You cut it off there. D equals, right on here, d equals negative, then no solution. Okay. Actually, it's kind of nice when that happens because it's less work for us. Absolute value x plus 2 plus 4 outside equals 7. So within the absolute value, you have the expression x plus 2. You should be getting the hang of this now. So we have d. D is not multiplied by anything in the front. There's a 4 being added to it, and it's equal to 7. So D's only operation's a plus 4, no times. So I don't have to divide. I just minus the 4, get it to 0. 3. So a distance of 3, I could have 3 or negative 3. Okay, now solve for your x. So x has one operation, a plus 2, no times or no divide. So we'll just get the 2 to a 0 by minusing 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Okay, minus 2, minus 2. You essentially do the same thing here that you're doing here. It's just repeating. But now it's negative 3 minus 2. So negative 5. Okay, 2 absolute value of x equals 14. So inside the absolute value, you just have x. It ain't 2x. 2's not inside. So x equals x equals. So once I get here, it's solved. So d. D will have a multiplier of 2. Nothing added behind it. It's just equal to 14. So we just have 2 times d equals 14. Okay, so I divide by 2. And d would equal 7. So the distance is 7. You can be at 7 or negative 7, and problem solved. X doesn't have any operations with it. It's solved. Okay, next one. 4 absolute value x minus 3 equals 20. So inside the absolute value, you have the expression x minus 3. So now let's forget about that and just rewrite it as d. D stands for distance. So I got to find what the distance is equal. And I don't know because the distance is multiplied by 4. Nothing's added to the distance. The minus 3 is inside. Okay, I'm talking about after the box is ended. There's nothing being added or subtracted. It just equals 20. Okay. So your operation's a times, so you solve times equations by dividing. So that equals 5. Distance is 5, so I could be at 5 or negative 5. Okay, now the only operation with the x is a minus 3. There's a minus, so plus negative, so you just circle the x. You don't have to worry about the multiplier or divider. You just add 3. That's 8. X equals 8. Then the same process over here. Plus same thing here that you're doing here. Only now it's negative 5 plus 3, and that's negative 2. Again, if you want to verify that answer, 8 minus 3 is 5. The distance from 5 to 0 is 5 times 4 is 20. Negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5, but that's a distance of 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, so that makes sense in both categories. Okay, last one. 3 absolute value x plus 2 plus 4 equals 13. So within the absolute value, we have the expression x plus 2. So that's over there. Let's now put d. So I bring down d. It has a multiplier of 3. That means 3 times the absolute value. After the bracket, after the d, you have a plus 4. Remember, not plus 2. Forget about the plus 2. It's inside there. Okay? If you want to exit that out, that's fine too. Make sure you get the x plus 2 exit it out, and it'd be 3 times d plus 4. If exiting it out helps you, then do it. Make sure the expression's placed over here, though. Equals 13. Now we solve for d. We got times and plus. So we got to get the plus to 4 to a 0. 3 times d equals 9. 3 times what's 9? Divide by 3 and find out. And it's equal to 3. So you could be at 3 or negative 3. Then operations to the x, you just have a plus 2. So you get the 2 to 0 by minusing 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Over here between the x and the 2 is a plus, so just see x get circled, no times, no divide. Get the 2 to a 0 by minusing 2. Okay? Be negative 5. Now you can verify your answer if you can see it. 1 plus 2 is 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. But then times 3 would be 9, plus 4 is 13. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3, but the distance from negative 3 to 0 is 3. Times 3 plus 4 is back to 13. Okay. If crossing that out helps, do it. Okay, because you drop the d down and so forth. Now, 1 through 4, you're not solving for x. You're just finding what the number that equals. Okay. Now these first 4 problems here. Okay. These first 4 problems here. The d is pretty well set. You'd have d equals 4, so x equals 4, negative 4. X minus 8 equals 5, negative 5, and then solve it. M plus 2 equals 3, then negative 3, solve it. 5x equals 10, then negative 10, solve it. Now number 9, you have a d minus 2 equals 5, so the d is not solved for. The first 4 it's pretty well solved for.